Title her. She was nobody's daughter anymore. At least, that's what the nurse whispered to the intern when they thought Sarah wasn't listening. But Sarah heard everything these days, every murmur, every sigh, every conversation that stopped the moment she rolled her wheelchair past the hospital corridor. At 17, she had memorized the sound of pity, and it followed her like a shadow she couldn't outrun. The accident had taken her parents on a rain-slicked highway 6 months ago. Sarah survived with a shattered spine and a future that felt as broken as her body. The insurance money had run out. The foster system didn't want a teenager in a wheelchair. So here she was, in a county hospital, existing in the space between recovery and an uncertain tomorrow, with nowhere to go and no one to call family. Every morning, she'd wheel herself to the window at the end of the hall and watch people arrive. They came for their loved ones, carrying flowers, balloons, hope. Sarah would create stories about them, imagining lives filled with Sunday dinners and inside jokes, the kind of ordinary magic she'd taken for granted before the universe rewrote her story in a single, violent moment. That's where she was on the Tuesday morning when everything changed. A woman burst through the hospital doors below, rain-soaked and frantic, dragging 2 small children behind her. Even from the 3rd floor, Sarah could sense the desperation in her movements. She watched as the woman collapsed at the information desk, her body convulsing with sobs while a security guard tried to calm her. Sarah didn't mean to care. Caring hurt too much these days. But something about the scene below gripped her. She wheeled herself to the elevator and descended, propelled by a curiosity she couldn't name. By the time she reached the lobby, the woman, Maria, she'd heard someone say, was being led to a chair, her children clinging to her like lifelines. "My husband," Maria was saying in broken English, her accent thick with anguish. "The construction accident. They say he needs surgery, but we have no insurance, no papers. They say without money." She couldn't finish. She didn't need to. Sarah understood immediately. She'd lived in that space between medical necessity and financial impossibility. She knew the weight of those words, without money. The hospital administrator, a tired-looking man named Mr. Peterson, was explaining something about payment plans and charity care, but his words felt hollow even to Sarah's ears. This wasn't about paperwork. This was about whether Maria's children would have a father tomorrow. Sarah wheeled closer, unsure what she was doing or why. "How much?" she asked. Everyone turned to look at her. The broken girl in the wheelchair, the one with no family, asking about someone else's catastrophe. "I'm sorry, Mr. Peterson said. The surgery. How much does he need?" "Young lady, this isn't $42,000, Maria whispered, the number a death sentence in her mouth. "We have nothing. We came here 3 years ago for a better life, and now." She buried her face in her hands. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. She thought about the settlement check that had arrived last week, the insurance payout from her parents' death. $150,000. Blood money, the lawyer had called it, though he'd used prettier words. It sat in a bank account, untouched, because Sarah couldn't bring herself to spend what her parents' lives had been reduced to. She'd been saving it, the nurses assumed, for her future. For college, maybe, or a house she'd never need since she had nobody to fill it with. For a life that felt impossibly distant from this hospital room where she'd been existing, not living, for months. "I'll pay for it," Sarah said. The lobby went silent. "What?" Mr. Peterson blinked at her. "I said I'll pay for the surgery. All of it." Maria's head snapped up, her eyes red and disbelieving. "No, no, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Sarah said, and she did. She understood that some things mattered more than money. That purpose could bloom in the darkest soil. That her parents, who had taught her to leave the world better than she found it, would have done the same thing without hesitation. The next hour blurred past in a flurry of phone calls, paperwork, and disbelief. Mr. Peterson kept asking if she was sure, if she understood what she was doing. Sarah had never been more certain of anything. She watched Maria's face transform from despair to hope, watched those 2 children stop crying, and felt something stir inside her that had been dormant since the accident. She felt needed. She felt purposeful. She felt alive. Maria's husband survived the surgery. 3 days later, Maria returned to the hospital, not as a desperate wife, but as a woman transformed by gratitude. She found Sarah in her usual spot by the window. I cannot repay you, Maria said simply, tears streaming down her face. But I can give you something. My family. You gave us back our father. Let us give you what you need most. Sarah didn't understand until Maria continued. My cousin, she is social worker. She says you have nowhere to go. Come home with us. Be our family. It was Sarah's turn to cry. She had spent so long believing her story had ended that night on the highway. But here was Maria, offering her a new chapter, proving that family wasn't just about blood. It was about the bonds we choose, the kindness we extend, the way we show up for each other in the darkest hours. 6 months later, Sarah sat in Maria's cramped but warm apartment, surrounded by the beautiful chaos of a family dinner. Maria's husband, recovered and laughing, was teaching Sarah Spanish curse words when his wife wasn't listening. The children called her, hermana, sister. They'd modified the apartment for her wheelchair, carved out a space that was hers, made her belong in a way she'd thought she'd never experience again. The settlement money was mostly gone, but Sarah had never felt richer. She'd used the rest to start a small foundation, helping other families caught in similar crises. Maria helped her run it, and together they'd already assisted a dozen people facing impossible choices. On the wall of her new bedroom hung a photo from the night of her first dinner with Maria's family. Sarah was smiling, truly smiling, for the first time since the accident. Below it, Maria had written a quote in careful English, "The only way to heal a broken heart is to give away the pieces." Sarah understood now. She'd thought the accident had taken everything from her. Instead, it had given her the opportunity to discover who she really was, not defined by her loss, but by her capacity to lift others from their own darkness. She'd learned that the most profound human power isn't in what we accumulate, but in what we're willing to give away. Every morning now, she woke up in a home filled with love, surrounded by a family she'd chosen and who had chosen her back. She was no longer nobody's daughter. She was everybody's sister, humanity's child, proof that sometimes the people we save end up saving us right back.